Dis November maand.
It's November. I'm in the Kruger National Park. It's very hot, but also very pretty. The first rains have fallen. The Shingwetsi River flows just down there. If I tell you that I'm here to do a story on armed rangers and poachers, you will of course immediately think rhinos. But believe it or not, it is not all that they have to guard so intensely these days. Tonight's story is about a tree. A tree that is so critically endangered here in Kruger that they've had to bring back retired game rangers to come and protect it. Interestingly enough, this tree was Tree of the Year a few years ago, Warburgia salutaris. Many of you will know it as the pepperbark, a beautiful tree with lots of medicinal value. And that's why we're here, to find out what all the fuss is about. But let me start at the beginning. Humans have been aware of this wonderful doctor tree from the earliest of times. The salutaris part of its name means good health, and ironically, this has led to the tree now being listed on the IUCN's Red Data list. The demand from the muti markets in the cities is much larger than what nature can supply. In KZN, it was already practically extinct 2 decades ago. This is partly why it was chosen as Tree of the Year. In the process, hundreds of saplings were planted outside protected areas with the hope that it would relieve some pressure on the natural Warburgias. Many studies and projects were started, but still the tree remains threatened. Earlier this year, my friend and co-environmental journalist Tim Neary invited us to Nelspruit, where SANParks, together with state organizations and private partners like SAPI, are working together to save these trees. The media event is typical of such occasions. All the role players are here, the sponsors, members of the media and other interested parties. The event unfortunately underplays the importance of the occasion, perhaps because the crisis has been kept under wraps for so long. The saplings that Tim brought with won't remain in the botanical garden. They are going to the nursery in Skukuza, from where they will be distributed to the local communities surrounding the park. Now, 3 months later, Tim and I are once again on our way to Nelspruit. I want to see exactly what everyone is doing to save this tree. One of the problems is that it's not particularly easy to cultivate. It grows relatively easy from seed, but it is apparently almost impossible to get your hands on viable seed. Cuttings are a possibility, but until now, they've been having limited success. In nature, the tree makes many new shoots from its widespread and shallow root system, so theoretically one should be able to propagate it from root. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Our first stop is once again at the Botanical Gardens in Nelspruit.
Ja, hierdie saad kom nou van die skool af. Ons het dit hier einde September geoes. Het ons nou hier skoon gemaak om hierdie vleesigheid.
So ongeplante kry moet 'n ou nou eers sy vleis van hom afkry.
Vleis van hom afkry en dan plante kom hierso.
You only have about a 70% success rate growing the Warburgia from seed, and only if you can find viable seed. There is a small wasp or fly that lays its eggs in the fruit, and that makes most of the seed barren. On the other hand, you can plant cuttings, but the success rate is much lower than seed, and they then grow a lot slower.
Kweek en baie ouens het verskillende metodes, 20%, 30%, dis omtrent al wat ons op hierdie stadium uitkry. Maar ja, en kan ek sien van stiggies is die groei verskillike stadig as jy nou kyk hoe ons hulle van saad groei, toe lyk daai plante teen hierdie stiggies, dan is dit die beste, is dit die ideaal om dit van saad af te groei. En miskien moet ons meer konsentreer om saad uit die veld uit te kry en te vasstel hoekom is daar so baie geparasiteer in die veld.
Everyone who can is helping. Just around the corner is the Agricultural Research Council. Here they sterilize and carefully store each cutting with a unique growth medium and hormone to try and work out the best recipe for speedy and successful growth, for conservation, the local communities, and possibly even for future commercial trade. But for now, all of that is still a long way away.
And then how long do you have to do these tests for before you actually know?
Until it grows, until it grows successfully.
Have you had success so far?
We have. Unfortunately, it was only one shoot where we've had some success, and it was very, very slow growing. So we'll have to go back to the drawing board and test our culture conditions again.
And which ones are you working on? The Kruger one?
Karen agrees that seed is the easiest route, if one can find parasite-free seed.
This is the fruit of the Warburgia, and you can see how parasitized it is. These little black dots are the stings from the insects that are parasitized.
And then what, does it lay its eggs in there? Or?
Yes, it lays its eggs in there, and eventually the seed gets parasitized, they eat the seeds, and you can't propagate trees from parasitized seeds.
We only have a few trees left in Kruger. Of those, do all of them make seeds every year or fruits?
The instances when I've been to that Punda population in Kruger, we've actually only noticed 1 or 2 trees that are regularly producing fruits.
Okay, and then of the fruits, what percentage of those would be parasitized?
Almost all of them are parasitized.
So what you're saying is it's easier said than done to say grow them off the seeds?
Absolutely, absolutely. Once you've got non-parasitized seeds, it's fairly easy to do, but you have to find them first.
They are also experimenting with micro-cuttings in the nursery.
Amos is busy producing micro-cuttings. We're having a look at a slightly different way of propagating the Warburgia compared with traditional propagation methods. And we've done a lot of micro-cutting work with various agricultural crops. So this is what we're doing with the Warburgia.
So you put it in different types of soil and you feed it different hormones and
exactly. You see which is working the best. And we're also trying different environments as well, and we'll see when we go into the tunnel.
After you. Make sure no flies come in here.
These are Warburgia trees that we've made from the micro cuttings, which you saw Amos producing just now. And they've been transplanted into bags to grow on before we plant them out or make further cuttings from them.
So how far are you guys from saying this is how it should be done?
I would still like to see a much higher rooting percentage than what we've got, but I think we're quite nicely along the way to producing an easy method for propagating the tree.
And so the time has come for us to travel north to Palabora. And tomorrow I will meet the rangers and the trees. And who knows, even maybe the parasites. As I understand it, there are 2 groups of trees. There are those inside the Kruger National Park and those from KZN. And there is the possibility that it could be 2 different subspecies. But they don't know that for a fact, and that is why they don't want to take the risk to plant the KZN trees inside Kruger. Because what if it is in fact a different subspecies? For that reason, they'll take these saplings to the communities outside the park, the people who are now doing the harvesting inside the park. And that will hopefully relieve the pressure from the park's trees. It all seems to make sense until you start thinking about it. Birds are the main seed distributors, so if you plant the other possible subspecies on the other side of the fence, it will surely just be a question of time before this tree ends up in Kruger. So why not just go ahead and plant them in Kruger from the outset? Early morning on day number 2, and one of Kruger's warmest months. Before we go into the park, I'm dropping in at 2 of SANPark's project leaders, Michelle Hofmeyer and Louise Schwemmer, and a traditional healer just outside Kruger. Michelle is head of the Skukuza nursery.
Hi, Rosie.
Rosie, I'm Johan.
Rosie is the big...
We're filming today to see what you're doing with the tree.
Thank you, you are welcome.
I see she's brought some trees for them to plant, but they're not from Kruger. I'm keen to know if she's not scared that these trees will contaminate the original Kruger population.
I don't think so. Those seeds are recalcitrant, you know. They're not going to survive, I don't think. The birds don't eat them. Monkeys eat them, but then they chew them. So, look, the demographics of the population indicate that it's subpopulations of a bigger population. And whether they've speciated, changed over the last couple of thousand years, it's hard to tell. But just by looking at their phenology, they look very similar.
In terms of where you are with your project now, what do you still need to achieve with it?
For us, we need to figure out a speedier way of getting them to grow from cuttings. That's the biggest challenge.
Or to start getting seed, more viable
More seed, yes. Basically, look, Louise has shown you guys the stuff out there, the protection and the knowledge that we've got, and Tony's also giving you the background. So we know a lot about population. It's well managed. We know what's going on there. The step that we need to figure out is how can we produce a lot of plants to supply over the next 3 to 5 years to the communities to reduce the pressure.
It is time to look around and chat to Rosie and her husband David. They are not just traditional healers, they are also running this medicinal nursery along with their colleagues.
We started 1998, but starting to operate, that was 1999 December.
And why did you start a nursery?
We started this to conserve the nature, because seeing that all this it's being finished up, because they cut all the trees, cut all the plants. So we said, no, let us make the gathering. We were 6 when we started here. Pepper bark, it's the most handy and useful plant, because you can cure many, many, many diseases, like flu, like sore throat, like maybe bronchitis, coughing and all that. So that is why we made use of this pepperbark plant.
In an effort to curb the destruction of Kruger's Warburgias, a group of old game rangers have been brought back from retirement to come and protect the trees. SAPI even contributed bicycles for them to use on patrol. After much deliberation, SANParks gave us the go-ahead to visit these critically endangered trees. No one is allowed to say how many pepper barks are still left in Kruger, but it is a mere handful. They've always been rare here because it's on the edge of their distribution range, but the Muti demand has wiped them out in their actual habitat outside the park, and now people are seeking them here in the wilderness. And then, before 9 in the morning and with the mercury already in the 30s, we finally arrive.
What is it, ID?
This is it. This is Warburgia. And if you turn around, there's actually a couple around here. There's one behind you. You can pick them out by this dark, shiny leaf.
So
En
nou
dit
is tussen hulle.
Ja, this is it.
En dis nou regtig want in die prentjie het ons het ek meen
And this really is the picture we have. Against the hill, grouped together. Game rangers regularly come to check on them. Here we can see where the bark has been stripped. What amazes me is all the walking to get here, over hills and through valleys and up the other side again. The poachers must really want these trees. To go through all this trouble from outside the park, past lines and other things, to come here to collect the bark. It's amazing. Almost every tree has scarring from bark harvesting, but at least there doesn't seem to be recent damage, possibly thanks to the success of the project. One of the problems is that the modern poacher seems to be more ruthless in harvesting since there are so few of these trees left.
So this is an example of some bark that's been removed quite recently. A very different approach. You can see here it's been sliced and huge big strips have been removed, resulting in a lot of damage to the crown of this stem. In contrast to these sort of older types of approaches to bark harvesting, you can see quite a nice contrast between these two over here.
So they literally take a panga, chop it and peel it off.
Yeah, so they literally slice it with a panga and then pull it. So once you can cut deep enough, you can really strip large pieces of bark off, as long as you're on a nice long straight stem.
And that's what the markets in Joburg are buying.
And that's what they're buying. The advantage of having long, thin strips of bark is that it's easier to transport, obviously, to get out of here. And then it breaks up nicely into these neat bundles of bark that can then be sold as a unit on the medicinal plant market.
And we are lucky to find a few fruit.
Yeah. Ah, I see, you got one. Yeah, that's it, hey? There's the fruit, and you can actually see the little sting mark there already from a wasp. These fruits are very heavily parasitized by wasps, which often results in the seeds being infertile and not able to germinate. Oh, they jump! They jump.
Jumping.
Jumping.
They're jumping!
Uh-huh.
So what Carlos is doing now is he's working on our cyber tracker, and he's collecting various bits of information on the individual Warburgia trees. So these guys carry these cyber trackers with them on a daily basis when they do the patrols. And we've got a number of marked individuals on the site. I think it's gone up to, we've got about 160 known individuals that we've marked and that we monitor every couple of years in terms of their height and various other variables of the plant. But on a daily basis, these guys monitor the trees as they come across them, and they look at things like phenology. They're interested in the fruiting and the flowering of the plants, just to see when these actually occur and what implications this might have for future conservation of the plants, and how those sort of things might be affected by harvesting and illegal harvesting that's taking place at the moment.
And then the penny drops. The fruits are no longer the plant's prime reproductive strategy. Instead of new seedlings, it decided on a strategy to keep itself alive for as long as possible by spreading its root system as far as possible. And when there's danger in one area, it simply grows a new stem somewhere else. Perhaps one day it will abandon the idea of producing fruit altogether. Or maybe it is keeping the fruit as a plan B and only produces enough to keep the wasps alive for when, in a possible emergency, it needs their pollination to survive. Then it might produce masses of fruit, ensuring that some are left untouched and ready for germination. But that is just my theory. And that is why this project is so important, because all the research done may lead to the actual answers we are looking for. Not just for the pepperbark, but for anything that is anchored in one spot and that needs to develop a survival strategy because it can't escape man's ever-increasing demands on nature. The pepperbark strategy may have served them well for thousands of years, but it did not take into account the population explosion of humans and the rate at which it was decimated outside the park. It cannot change its ways overnight and suddenly produce thousands of fruit or shoots. And that is why it is imperative that we need to help protect it against the biggest parasitic threat in the planet's history, the human race.